Hey everybody, it is Wintermute, and this is Japan Part 2. So I'm going to start off by talking about their special unit, which is the Special Naval Landing Force. That basically it's a Marine unit that it costs 5, but it is elite, so it is a 3-5 for stats, 3 on the attack, 5 on the defense. But it also counts as a Marine. Now, I talked before about how I feel about the SNLF units. For their price point, they are on par with the U.S. Marines, and they're okay in that sense. I still think they're a little pricey overall, even for the U.S. for what you get out of them. However, for Japan, I think they are painfully expensive. They are 5 points a pop. I would rather just use regular Marines. I really and it will. I'll kind of be able to illustrate that a little bit better when I talk about the starting position of their army. But Japan does not have a huge income at the beginning of the game, and they have a lot of ground to cover. They've got a lot of things to do, and I just think that SNLF are way too expensive to be able to build a ton of them. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have a place in the game. Early on, I would never build them unless I felt I had to. And there are reasons you may feel you have to. Here's why: you can only build 2 regular Marines a turn because they're specialized infantry. Well, you can also only build 2 SNLF a turn. But if you need a lot of Marines all of a sudden, Marine units all of a sudden, because you took heavy casualties with beach landings or whatever the case may be, then you can build 4 Marine units per turn, but it's you're gonna be paying 18 to get that done. Because you can build 2 regular Marine units and then 2 SNLF units, and you have your 4 Marine units. So they serve a purpose in that sense. And when your economy actually does start to ramp up, maybe you do want to go ahead and put a few of them in the field to have a little more umph when you're landing on the beaches. But again, for me, I don't ever expect Marine units to even hit. I expect the aircraft to be, doing that, or whatever else I've got going into the combat to be doing that. Marines are mainly there just to absorb the double hits on the first landing. So I don't ever, even though SNLF have better stats, they're still really costly. And they're more costly than a regular Marine doing what I only consider them to do, which is to suck up those double casualties. After that, if they don't even have to suck up double casualties and they even get a hit, maybe, well, great, that's just icing on the cake. But I don't ever expect that. So, like I said, I think that they are painfully expensive for Japan, but they do serve a place in the overall scheme of things where they could be useful. Excuse me, I still have this cough that I can't quite get rid of. My allergies are a lot better, but yeah, I just, this cough won't go away, so I apologize for that. So, okay, with my thoughts on SNLF out of the way, we're going to go into what Japan has to think about. And Japan has to think about a lot. You have a lot to do, and you don't have a lot to do it with. Okay, let me start off by saying, when you set up Japan for the first time, you will probably look at that huge navy, and you will just look at it in awe, and you'll go, wow, that is awesome. Look at that. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not enough. Okay, get that into your head. It's not enough. You start off in a good spot with your Navy, but you are going to have to reinforce it throughout the game at various points, if not every turn, to be able to keep momentum up with it and to be able to keep things going in your favor. Now, even though you have that amazing Navy at the start there, once you start breaking it up into units to cover this direction and all these different sea zones where you've got different things to do, it is going to thin out real quick. It's the truth. I'm just telling you that right now. And when you start thinning it out like that, you will quickly realize, oh man, I'm still having trouble getting all the islands I want, getting everything reinforced the way I want it, setting up a defensive picket line with my ships the way I want. And then you also become much more vulnerable to FEC and ANZAC counterattacks with their Navy and their Air Force, let alone the fact that you got America breathing down your neck any moment. So keep that in mind. Your Navy at the start of the game, in and of itself, is not big enough by itself to get the job done. I really feel strongly with that about that to be able to say it that decisively. Now, with that said, let's talk about your Air Force. If your Navy isn't enough to get it done, your Air Force is even in worse shape. You're gonna have to consider building more fighters, more medium bombers, and more tactical bombers. Maybe even some transports and all the other bells and whistles. You don't start with an amazing Air Force. You have to build into it, just like Germany has to build into the full size army that took out Poland and then took out France. You have to build into it with them. You got to do the same thing with Japan. You have to build into that historically big and powerful Air Force that they had, and competent Air Force. Now, what you actually buy to get there, that's kind of up to you, and you'll have to do the math as the game goes. But so the Navy's going to need reinforcement, and the Air Force is going to probably need even more reinforcement as you play the game. And then that brings us to your ground army, the actual military. If the other two branches are lacking, then your ground army barely is even showing up for the fight. You have nowhere near enough ground units to be able to get done what you want. Even if you take the low-hanging fruit of the FEC first, or excuse me, not the FEC, the Dutch East Indies, which is much easier to take with less infantry, you're still going to need to build a bunch of infantry and Marines and maybe even airborne to be able to get that stuff done. Your ground army is just horrible to start the game in 1936. And again, I'm not going to specifically tell you what you need to build or how to build it. I'm going to just say these are the three things that right off the bat you're going to have to consider, and where they stand in their readiness level. You got a good Navy, but it's not enough. You have an okay Air Force, not enough. And your ground army just stinks. It just does not have what it needs to get the job done. And you definitely, and for as much island hopping as you're going to do, I'll tell you right now, you don't start with a single Marine unit on the board. So you're going to have to build Marines. I would recommend building, assuming you're going to be doing that you plan on doing a lot of island hopping rather than this great grand land campaign, you're probably going to need to build 2 a turn for most of the game, to be honest. Maybe not. I say things. I will say this. Take what I say with a little bit of grain of salt, in that you don't know how your game is going to work out. Things, dice rolls and the decisions of the other players. And I've always said, even when I talk strategy, you can have the greatest strategy in the world, but if you don't adapt to what's going on the board in front of you, you have no hope. You have to kind of look at the game as it develops. But as Japan, those are the three pillars that you've got to work on from the very beginning. So then you've got a couple other things that you need to think about. When and where are you going to start your war? You already have Manchuria at the start of the game, so that's done. Now, historically and traditionally, in most games like this, your first swing is into China. However, it doesn't have to be that way. There are other options. Notably, I know there's been a lot of people talking about going after the Dutch East Indies first. One thing you need to really consider is if you are going to go after the Dutch East Indies, and that's your plan, then you need to talk with the German player about what he's going to do in the Netherlands. Because if he attacks the Netherlands, and takes out the Netherlands themselves, then their colonies will align with Britain. So all this becomes British. And if all this becomes British, it's you come down, you have to declare war on Britain to take it. So if you're going to take those, you have to make sure that he's either going to keep Netherlands neutral long enough, or you're going to pull the trigger before he goes after the Netherlands home country to be able to take those, so that they are so that when you attack them, they become controlled by the British player, but not aligned to the British player, because Britain will not be at war with you, but the Netherlands will be. That's a very important distinction that you need to think about. Now, the other thing you need to think about is what's the best bang for your buck in terms of those two options. Real quick, I think this is kind of how I look at it. China is in the long run, you're going to get more economy out of China. There's a little more money on the coast, especially when you factor in the bonus income from those territories I mentioned earlier. And the coast is fairly easy to get. Well, it's easy because you have your navy there. So I won't say but you're going to fight harder for that than you will for the Dutch East Indies. Now, the Dutch East Indies, the money is going to be slightly less than China, but it's going to come to you a lot easier because the Dutch East Indies just don't have the same kind of units on the map to start with, and they're really not going to get much as the game goes on. And even if you attack them and they start making their recruitment rolls, that's still nothing. That's paltry compared to what China's going to be putting on the board between the KMT and the CCP every turn. So, but now the other thing to consider with that is who are you going to piss off more by either action? Now, if you go into China, you are going to piss off everybody a little bit. You're going to piss off America for 5. You're going to piss off Anzac for, I believe it's 2, FEC for 2, and I think Britain is 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly. And then France is going to be a little pissed off. It's basically the same thing with the Dutch East Indies. However, instead of being a solid 5 like China is, you're going to be rolling 2d6 for the Dutch East Indies. So we're just going to say that's going to average out to 7. So then Anzac will get even more pissed at you than they would if it was going into China because they're like a 3. But everybody else is relatively the same. So on average, going after this is going to piss off the other major powers a little bit more. Now, of course, there's a big swing there when you're rolling 2d12. You could roll boxcars, and all of a sudden America goes up 24. These guys go up 3. They go up 2. So you're looking at over 30 points. 30 points. Excuse me. No, it's 7. I'm sorry. It's more 14. It's 14. So this is I'm sorry, math. It can be very hard sometimes, especially after work. So if you go into China, it's a set amount for everybody. There's no rolling of the dice. If you go into the Dutch East Indies, you're going to be rolling that 2d12. Each d12 is going to be a 7 on average, which is what I meant in my head. So we're going to say 13. It's more 6.5. So we're going to just go with 13. On average, if you roll boxcars, in this case 12s, that's 24. You're looking at, you just gave the Allies peacetime income increase by 30. Now, if you roll snake eyes, it's like what, 10? See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, it's like maybe 10 points. So you have to, it's how lucky do you feel? Dutch East Indies has the potential to really piss off the world if you go after them. But again, you're going to walk in a lot easier and take that a lot easier than China. But China, in some ways, China is, it's what the impact will be, because America's going to be 5 and these will be 3 and they'll be 2 or 2 and 2 and 2 and 1 and 1 and so on and so forth. So China is more predictable. But But Dutch East Indies it's a little more of a gamble, even though it's slightly lower hanging fruit. So with taking all that into mind, it's kind of up to you. It's up to you which way you think you should go. I am curious as to how other players feel about this. I know some, General Hand Grenade did a whole video kind of pointing this out and saying, "Hey, this is a good idea." But I also, when you look at some of the numbers, it is risk. It's a little riskier. In the long run. And I'm sure there are other factors that maybe I don't fully see, like starting off the game down or starting off the real war down here with all this already in your possession may put you in a much stronger physical position. So there's that too. So not having actually played that out yet, I am curious as to get some input from other players as to how they feel about Dutch East Indies versus China as your first real target. So that's something to consider. In that same vein, when do you pull the trigger? Do you wait as long as you can, build up, build up, build up, and then just slam into China really hard, or the Dutch East Indies, or whatever the case is? Or do you go in and start the war with China at turn 3 or 4? But going in sooner means you get the territory sooner, mean you get the income from that sooner, and all that stuff. But you're also upsetting the allies sooner, so they're getting more money in the long run from that. Uh, you know, are your attack, and the sooner you go in, your attacks may be a little more risky because they have more units. On the other hand, are the CCP and the KMT really fighting each other a whole lot, or are they just at a standstill? If they're fighting each other a lot, maybe it's worth it for you to stand back and let them kill each other off, and then pick the carcass clean. If they're not, well, then maybe you want to you just need to reconsider. You need to look at the circumstances and look at your position and what you think you can get away with and when the best time to attack is. So when to pull the trigger is a real difficult question for Japan. The other issue being maybe Japan, and this is again, the Japan and Germany need to talk to each other, because if Japan goes against America real early in the game, well, and puts America at wartime income, America just turns around and declares war on Germany, and maybe they're in maybe that's horrible for Germany. Maybe Germany goes, "Oh God, I couldn't do no, no, God, I need you to wait at least 2 more turns. I didn't realize you were going to go at them this soon." Because while America is still building up slowly, it's not like they don't start with anything in the Atlantic. They do start off with plenty of stuff in the Atlantic that can immediately get out there and start sinking U-boats, relieve the British of their convoy duty and take over convoy duty and things like that. That suddenly puts all this extra pressure on Germany. In addition to whatever America may, maybe they already have landing craft over there ready for Operation Torch right from the get go. So I really think that Japan and Germany do need to talk about the timing of when they're going to attack what, and how that's going to play out. One of the things with Japan is, and I still really think about this a lot, and I don't have a good answer. Is it better for Japan to play very, more passively, maybe not very passively, but more passive, keep America out of the war for as long as humanly possible, and then right before they're going to enter the war next turn, that's when you pounce? Or do you just do a build up for the first couple turns, go into China, get your goals in China, and then turn around, build up, and then just slam into the FEC and Anzac and Philippines and do all that real quick and overwhelm them, and then go, okay, now I've got all this stuff. Now you need to come at me. That's a tough one. That's a real tough one. I don't, and again, I don't have a good answer for that, because some people love being super aggressive. Some people are really hell bent on getting their IPP level up as quickly as possible, as fast as possible, so they can start prominent, but that may not be the best way to play Japan. You may want to really pace yourself throughout the game and really pick your targets carefully and really choose when to pull the trigger on your targets very carefully to maximize your firepower and your units that are available to you, and maximize all your resources and keep the America and the other allies kind of at bay for as long as possible. And I really think Japan's in a tough spot there with this juggling act between all these different things that not only all these different goals that they have and things that they have to do, but then all the various pressure that's going to come in on them from various other places on the map. So again, this is the stuff you need to think about when you're playing Japan. I'm kind of giving you an overview. I'm not telling you what specifically to do. So now the next thing is, if you're going to go into China, do you go in, take the good stuff, which is basically those coastal territories, and then kind of just play this cat and mouse game with them? Or do you really go in whole hog and you try to wipe out China and just get every Chinese unit off the board? If that's your goal, good luck. It is not easy. And the main reason it's not easy is, great, you've got all, here's your power base right here. This is where your fighters are going to be based off of your aircraft carriers. This is where your shore bombardments are. This is where your new units come in, all that stuff. Once you start coming in to these territories and even farther in that way, you may just run out of steam. And you may have to decide, all right, I'm just going to do this holding action, and they can have that part, but I'm going to keep this part. That may relieve you of a lot of the pressure of having to push and free up units to come down here and do other stuff. But then you still have the CCP and KMT who may still just continue. Okay, here's a couple more infantry, couple more infantry, couple more infantry, couple more infantry. And then all of a sudden, they're really threatening your line by just sheer manpower coming over the border, and you may not have what it takes to stop it. And then they do that at the worst possible time when you're on a major offensive down here, and then you got to suddenly pull resources to go back up there to shore that up. And so China can be a real damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. That's the problem. There's a lot of spoils there, but there's a lot of problems there as well. So again, that's a decision you're going to have to make as the Japanese player is how far into China are you going to go if you're going to go into China, assuming you're going to go into China at some point. So let's see, one point I want to make while I'm thinking about it is shore bombardments. I'm not going to go into the rules of shore bombardments, but I'm telling you right now from experience, never, ever, ever please rely on shore bombardments to actually win you the battle. When they hit, great. But when you're actually doing your calculations, please don't rely on them. You got to send in more than just that. You got to send in some air power or more units or whatever the case is, because while there is a wider variety of ships in this edition, all of the shore bombardment hit numbers have been reduced by like one across the board. And like I said, it's great when they hit, but please, I'm telling you right now, just do not rely on them to win you the battle. They are just too low, and they only get that first round of attack, and they're limited by the number of ground units going in on that first round. So you've got to take all that into consideration. And if you are relying on them to hit, I really feel and again, maybe I just roll bad, but man, I think they're really going to disappoint you in the long run. You want to make sure that you've got long-term sustained kind of firepower backing your infantry when you go into places via shore. So I'm just warning you now. I really, shore bombardments are, like I said, when they hit, they're icing on the cake, but I never actually expect them to hit. It's great when they do, but please don't rely on them. And yes, I sound a little jaded when I say this, and that's fine. It's because of experience. I'm just putting it out there. Maybe you're great with them. Maybe you're lucky with them. God bless you. If you can pull them off, but I just can't. So just a cautious warning. Another thing that Japan can consider when it's building its strategy is you have a lot of these islands out here with naval bases and air bases and stuff kind of on them. If you stage the main bulk of your fleet here, you are still not telegraphing whether or not you are going to go into China or whether or not you're going to come down to the Money Islands. And that's one of the nice things about Japan is the way that they're kind of set up here in this, and the way they can put their fleet in these kind of central locations. And they could even go here and upgrade that to a major port, and then stage their fleet here to get that +1 bonus. Excuse me. And then you're not telegraphing where you're necessarily going to go, because from here you can still go 1, 2, 3 and reach, all the coastal territory for China. At the same time, from right here you can go 1, 2, 3 and pretty much reach all the money islands down here. Or if you're not at war with a major power, you could stage here or here, and you can still get down to most of Australia, if not all of it, from those locations. And or 1, 2, 3, you can still get to India. So you don't have to telegraph what you're going to do with your fleet. You can kind of spread your fleet out a little bit, but make sure that they're all in the position where when you actually pull the trigger, you go, I'm really going to take Calcutta next turn. He doesn't know that because you're spread out. You're not predictable as you can be unpredictable as Japan because of where you're going to put your stuff and have it still reach so many targets down here for your invasions. So keep that in mind. If you come down here and you stick your entire fleet, out way out there, and you're like, well, okay, he's going to go after Australia. Or if you stick your fleet too far down here, okay, well, clearly he's going to go over. Oh, well, clearly he can't even reach China from some of these places. Well, so I don't think he's really reinforcing China. He's going to go for Australia. You don't have to telegraph what you're going to do. You can kind of position your fleet in a way where it's unclear of what your ultimate target is. And that's one of that is a really nice thing about Japan. I will say that. Italy has some of that too. Germany not so much, because they're locked in a land war. But yeah, so I would, like I said, when you don't have to telegraph what your next move is, don't. And that's a kind of a rule for any nation. Keep your options open, and try not to let your opponent know what you're obviously going for if you can help it. Sometimes that can't be helped. Oh well. You'll just have to kind of deal with that. And then, okay, the last big thing I want to talk about is the surprise attack. Now, obviously, the traditional target is whatever chunk of the American fleet you can reach. And it's an oldie but a goodie from a Japanese perspective. However, it's not your only option. There at least twice now in previous games, I've actually used my surprise attack to take out British Malaya, because that is usually a tough nut to crack because it's fortified, and usually it's got several units there, if not on top of that several militia, maybe even a fighter or something. So I've used it a lot to take out, or several times to take out British Malaya, crack that nut, and then kind of open this up for me. Now, of course, that leaves the problem of whatever American fleet is still out there. You may not even get a good swipe at the American fleet based on where he positions it. The nice thing is, though, is it doesn't expire like the German Lightning War does. The only expiration is on the turn that you declare war on those particular powers. Let's look at the wording again real quick, just to make sure we get it right. On the land or sea zone, it declares war on the British Commonwealth or USA. So yeah, So the turn you declare war on either or of those nations, that's when you can use your sneak attack. You may even want to take out the FEC Navy, or maybe the Anzac Navy, depending on how much Navy Anzac has built. I know the last game I played, somebody took out Sydney with it. So there's probably the most clear-cut one is do as much damage to the American Navy as possible. And that is, you're probably not going to go wrong with that in terms of getting a good bang for your buck. But just remember, it's not your only option. There are plenty of other, targets out there that would make, reasonable targets for the sneak attack. So, that was a lot. There was a lot for Japan there. There's a lot they need to consider, a lot of things that they need to think about. They're definitely one of the harder nations to play, I feel. I think, personally, I think Britain may be the hardest overall. And I'll explain why. I think Japan is probably second, and Germany is probably third, and then maybe Italy. America is very straightforward, and Russia is pretty straightforward. Not that they don't have their own issues and caveats and things they need to think about, but in terms of difficulty, I definitely think Japan, with all it has to get done and all the logistics that you have to think about troop transports and getting your units from Japan. Oh, that's another thing that I didn't really cover is all of your major production points are on the Japanese home island. That makes life very difficult for you if you've got to constantly send your units back to pick up new guys and then bring them out here. So now you do have a factory in Rihei. It's a minor factory, obviously. I would put the idea out there of building at least a minor factory here in Siam, just to have more production points away from the home island. Obviously, you don't have to. I think it's definitely something to consider with Japan, because if they constantly have to go back to the home island, it really slows your game down. And you're going to take casualties as you go deeper into China. And as you go island hopping, your opponents are going to get lucky enough to start wearing away your guys that you're going to have to replace somehow. And then when the FEC and Anzac start counterattacking, assuming they will at some point, and then America's breathing down your neck, constantly having to run back to the home island is such a pain in the rear end. So I would look at other places to get production points out and about if you can pull it off. I think Siam is obviously a good option. One or two in China, if you're going deep into China, probably not a terrible option. But that's something to just kind of consider as you play as well. So, like I said, that was a lot to cover. If anybody thinks I missed anything with Japan, very important core kind of stuff, please go ahead and leave a comment, or a note below, or contact me, and so we can kind of talk about it a little more. Japan really is like I said, I really think that they're the second most difficult nation out there to play. So, any one of the things I kind of talked about could almost be its own video in so many ways. So, just, yeah. So, there we go. Hopefully that's enough to get you started with Japan. Feel free to contact me with any questions or comments. And this is Wintermute signing off. I'll be back next time with the Commonwealth. Yeah, that's going to be a long one too.